main thing, the reason for this video today, I'm kind of giving you secrets on how I tackle wiring jobs, complete wire harness jobs, specifically here on early bay buses 68 through 71. Now this bus is a 70, as I mentioned. The wiring harness kit that I used and have used here in the shop at the bus barn, I get from Wolfsburg West. Their 70-71 kit is actually, it's a similarity kit. They're pretty identical in how they wire, aside from a couple things, mostly the relays for the turn signal and the hazard light, stuff like that. Interesting enough, this bus, I have receipts for the last 30-something years. This bus was rewired in the late 90s. The original 70 buses, early production, had an orange, yellowish bakelite fuse box that crapped out and corroded and split down the center. Goodness, well within early production. So they retrofitted to a new white box. This bus here, when it was rewired in the 70s, has a 72 fuse box, 505C part number. So what I've done is I've taken this Wolfsburg West wiring harness. It comes ready, plug and play more or less, as a 71. The 72 fuse box and the 71 fuse box is basically the same, aside from a couple of posts where you have to bridge some jumper wires to transfer power, but basically the same. So we are wiring, or I have wired, the 72 fuse box is a 71, even though the bus is a 70. I don't know if y'all gonna hear me over the rain. It's starting to come down, but my 70 here is wired as a 71 using a 72 fuse box. Keep things interesting. But anyway, back on topic. You notice here that the windshield is out. You'll notice that the dash cover is out. And this is the way to do this. If you're tackling small wiring stuff, sure, I understand. You bridge underneath, you reach underneath the dash, you look up, you have a light, you tackle what you need to. Say if a headlight switch goes bad or the hazard switch goes bad, which oftentimes they do separate. But if I'm tackling a wiring job, a harness replacement job on these buses, this is what I do. One, it gives you a chance to see what you're working with on your windshield sill. Oftentimes the sill itself is bad. The amount of crud that accrues and builds up over 50 years is pretty gnarly. So you'll notice all my HVAC pieces and stuff, I remove all this stuff, and simple green, some hot water, cigarette smoke, mold, dust, hair, funk, get it all out of there. You're going to be breathing that stuff. Glove boxes are typically in shambles if they're the original, like press board, hardboard type material. I pull the original harness. This is not necessarily a how-to, but tips on what I do. I pull the harness. I'll take reference photos, but oftentimes this stuff is hodgepodge, and I've done this long enough to where the reference that I need to reflect on the photos that I take, I kind of skip that process because I've done this so many times. I know that the dash illumination wires are going to be some type of like gray, red, or the indicator lights for, they say, the oil pressure, or the voltage regulator, generator light stuff's going to be blue, green. It comes with experience, so I don't really take a whole lot of photos. This dash has an exception because it does have a early bay factory clock in it. But what I like to do, if you need to take reference photos, do so. I pull the windshield out, remove the Phillips screws along the edge here, and it gives me access to kind of pry this dash cover up, and you remove the 10mm nuts on these studs. That is this section here. That'll pull back, and you're able, with this off, to pull the metal cover off. And this is why. you guys probably saw in the background, but you notice how nice this looks. What I like to do is I like to pull these out. These are always weathered. They're chalky. They're rusty. They have just that grime. A little bit of rain still on here. I pull these because it transforms the interior when you're driving. It's a completely different experience. Now this is just normal gloss black powder coat. I've done this on numerous buses. I've never had an issue with glare. Blue-eyed, I do have sensitivities, but I've never had an issue with like reflection or something with sunlight coming through the windshield off of this, but something to be mindful of. But this is why I pull this off. I like to sandblast these. I like to powder coat these. Get rid of some of the tin noise, so it kind of the powder kind of insulates it a little bit. I will be putting a stock speaker back in its factory location here, but I like to clean this up. So the windshield is out. You remove the necessary hardware for this. You pull this guy out, and it's left with this view that you have here. Another thing that I like to do, find a dummy wire real quick. So typically factory, unless we're not going to factor in fog lights or any type of secondary switches or anything like that, 12 volt, a cigarette lighter, anything like that. You're going to have your hazard light, you're going to have your wiper motor switch, and you're going to have your headlight switch. You're going to have an interior dome light as well, but that's a pretty simple two-post wire. But this is a 531B, which is the early version of 71 through 79. All the replacement headlight switches, this is a headlight switch, are 531E. You can usually tell because the 58B post, which is your dash light post, is always skinny rather than the typical post. But anyway, when you have this guy installed in the dash, you can't see the numbers, the letters that tell you what post is what. So what I like to do, you have this accessibility going into the dash. What I like to do, I don't put the extrusion nut and pinch this switch down onto the dash. What I do is I leave it loose. That way I'm like, oh, okay, I have this wire coming from the fuse box, or this wire has to run from the headlight switch to the emergency switch. I'm looking for post 30. Well, when it's in there, you can't see, and you're down there with the light, you're fighting the other wires and stuff. I leave the switches free. That way I can say, all right, post 30, bam. And then I can run this wire to said emergency switch or run it down to the fuse box. But leaving the switch free, it allows you to bring it up here so that way you're not contorting yourself, because this isn't a 2-hour job. I mean, I've done this numerous times, and this here, this job's basically licked. I have the reverse lights coming off the transmission, that wire, little harness that I have to hook up, the tail lights, reverse lights themselves, license plate lights, and the stuff in the rear is still floating because I'm still doing some paint and body work back there. But this job is basically completed. But having these switches out, it helps you eliminate error, because rather than guessing, like, oh, that's 58, you put it there, but really you put it on post 58B or 56. Some of that stuff starts to look the same. So that's a little trick of the trade. Another thing that I like to do, give me just a second. So the instrument cluster is installed. That's what you see all the wires going to. This is just some parts that I have lying around. The face is, say, the speedometer here. This is, yeah, you notice that the numbers are, you notice the numbers are below the needle. This is a 68. This is a 68 face. But, where the hell did that go? But this one's not too bad because I'm sure I've cleaned it in the past. But the faces here get pretty grimy. And of course you have glass that overlays this that's on the dash. But I like to clean the faces here. And having this stuff removed allows you to access this stuff. Now there's just some, what are they? Maybe M6. They're small-headed hex screws. This will pull off of the plastic housing, and you're able to clean the faces. You're able to look at the gears in here to clean things. Since this has fallen off, I'll show you this. This face pops off, and of course you have color in here. Of course, these are your turn signal indicators. You have your green light for your dash. They're varying model to model, but what have you. These colors kind of can get faded. They make little kits to replace those. So that's another thing I like to tackle when I have all this stuff free. This bus specifically has got a weird thing going on to where when you have the dash removed, because if you're doing this the other way, the hard way, you hook everything up. You don't have the accessibility. You're not following the line of the wire because it's breaking, because you're looking past the column. Things to cloud judgment or to cloud understanding. This here, everything is clean, is precise. You can see where the wire is connected, where it's going. And then once you have everything connected, you hook it back up to a battery. You're able to test your system. And say something's awry, you're able to troubleshoot it. You're able to put a voltmeter on it. You're able to put a test light to it to see if you're getting power or if it's a grounding issue. And like I was saying, this bus specifically, the wiper motor here, it's a 2-speed switch, and key on, power on, key on. The first speed for the wiper motor, it behaves, but the second speed, it bogs down. And it's getting the right voltage. It's not a voltage drop. It's just something wonky going on inside of this actual motor. And that's one of those things to where this is a thorough job. I like to be thorough, and this is a time-consuming job. So we're going to try to do it right. So this is an opportunity before I put the dash cover back in and close all this up and have the windshield back in. This gives me a chance to test the systems. If I had not have done that, I wouldn't have known that the wiper motor was bad. This would have been enclosed. I would have been coming through the glove box with it removed through the opening here, trying to access the wiper motor, the switch. There's a mini harness that comes from the motor to the switch. It makes it more difficult than it needs to be. And I think this is the best way to do this. This gives you a chance to clean the back face of the dash itself. Get all of that dust, that grime, cigarette smoke, spilt coats, just funk, man. And gives you a chance to clean all of that stuff. Gives you a chance to see the condition of your switches. This headlight switch isn't bad, but there's a plastic housing basically in this metal, this aluminum body, and especially the emergency switches. These two like to separate, so what happens is the functionality of the switch is not making contact inside, and the turn signals relay through the emergency switch. So you'll have wonky intermittent turn signals, your hazard switch won't work. So this gives you a chance to see what shape your components are in, your switches, your motor, your fuel gauge, your speedometer, a trick also to see what kind of shape your speedometer and odometer is in. You take a drill you know, because this is cable driven. This is still old school. So you leave the speedo hooked up to the speedometer. The wire comes down to the driver front wheel. Take you a drill bit. Don't go crazy. You'll be going 120 mile an hour, but turn the drill and see if the odometer is reading. See if the speedometer is turning. It's raining today, so I don't know how audible it'll be. Kick the fans off. It's hotter than hell here in Arkansas this summer. But we'll turn the music down, and this gives you a chance to see what kind of shape the speedometer odometer is in, to see if the gears are sticking, to see if they're whirling or making noise. The cables, the accelerator cables do go, or the speedometer cables rather, I'm sorry, do go bad. This gives you a chance to re-lubricate them, to put oil in them, and to help them keep movement within the cable sheeting. I'm trying to think. It is a booger wiring in the turn signal switch and the ignition switch. Oftentimes these wires have been cut, and over that time, splice, so you get shorter and shorter wiring. So it's difficult to attach, say, the turn signal switch and the ignition switch when the column is dropped, but you don't have the length that you need from those wires to get to the connections that need to be made here in the dash. So having this, you can bring this back up. You can make sure that you're not pinching wires coming from the column, ignition or turn signal switch, so you're not grounding out, say, terminal 15 or post 30 off the battery, so you're not going to melt wiring, you're not going to have a ground short, you're not going to have any issues with that. You have the length of wiring that you need to make the connections cleanly. And this truly is the best way to do this. And this is one of those things where I'm still a young guy, I'm not an old dog. I still consult old timers that have been doing this since the late 60s. There are many people that are a wealth of knowledge. I'm just passing this along. No one directly told me this is the way to do it. I'm a tall guy. I don't like laying in the wheel well with the door against my back, contorting. I'm not the most flexible. Let me just stand here on an anti-fatigue mat in the floor of the shop, looking down at it, having clean access to what I need to do. Let me operate, listen to tunes, and have a clear view, clear mind. Not physical fatigue, because this can be mentally exhausting when you're not familiar with it. Now, as I've mentioned, this is not an endorsement sponsorship thing. Jeff and I talked about this. Jeff used to work for Wolfsburg West back in the late 90s. They've came a long way. They offer a great product. Their wiring kit is no different. There are other options for wiring kits, a lot more availability for bugs, stuff like that. But for buses, I really think Wolfsburg West has this down about as clear as possible. Now, there are some differences between the schematics that Wolfsburg sends out here with their kit. Again, this is a 70-71 bus, so the first page being 1970 layout schematic. Secondary is going to be 71, and this is what I used here. But as I was mentioning, there are some variations, some differences between, say, this schematic here that they send with their kit and what you would find online in a shop manual or on the Samba, looking at printed schematics, whether it be a digital version of the shop manual or a Climber or a Haynes manual, something like that. But another question that I get is, I think the kits are like $400 right now. It's a bunch of wire. Is the kit worth $400? And the amount of time that I have to scratch my head and troubleshoot miscolored wiring to figure out what previous owners have done, 1,000 times over, yes, buy the kit. Proper color coded wiring, it's the right gauge wiring for the instrument that you're hooking up. You know, I've seen it all, man. Wire too thin to carry the battery voltage for post 30, and the wiring gets hot. It's not able to carry the voltage, the amperage. The kit really is a great bang for your buck. The sheething for the wiring front to back for the bus. It's got the grommets you need. It's got the sheathing. It's got the color coded. It's got the right fittings on it. You know, some of this stuff on the earlier bays, the relays are in the fuse box, and the late stuff too. But it's got the right connections, female connectors, to be able to lock into the fuse box. It makes for a clean job. It allows future technicians, mechanics to troubleshoot if anything goes awry. They can look at it, they can see the color-coded wiring. I say that there are a couple things differently. Some of the wiring stuff for the door buzzer coming over for the dome light and for the buzzer is different, but 99% of this stuff is on the money. It's a great kit, and it's totally worth it. You're investing in it. If you're rewiring a car, you're obviously investing your time and money into it. You care for it. You want to depend on it. You want your brake lights to work. You want your horn to work. You want your dash to be able to light up at night. You want your turn signals to work. That way the guy riding your ass is not being in an a-hole because you didn't send him a blinker. These things are slow, even though you got power in the back. But you use the tools that you can, and this kit allows you to do that. So that's basically it. That's basically it. Gives you a chance to clean everything. Gives you a chance to inspect your components, your switches, your gauges, your speedometer. Gives you a chance to clean your ductwork and stuff for your HVAC. Gives you a chance to clean your dash cover. Sandblast it, paint it, prime it, powder coat it, whatever you'd like. Gives you a chance to clean that up. Gives you a chance to inspect the pinch weld, the seal here for the windshield seal itself. As you can see, this thing needs to be cleaned up, but so does the rest of the bus. Plenty left to do with this. I try to make these videos, but I get in these moods where I just want to work, so I don't shoot enough footage. But I hope somebody finds this useful. Is this a do-it-yourselfer job? For me, it is. Of course, I have an air-cooled shop, and I'm biased. I've done this plenty of times before. But with the schematic that you get, the kit that comes with it, there will be a learning curve. But do I think this is a job capable for someone that has basic mechanical ability, comprehension? Yes. I have a 30x50 shop here. I'm waiting on a few components. I'm waiting for the head unit to come for the radio. I'm waiting for the speaker to come. Trying to think what else. I wired in my oil tint gauge. Wired in fog light switch, but I'm still waiting to get into wiring the fog lights themselves, waiting for the lights. There's a few things holding me off from wrapping this up, but what I'm getting at, a do-it-yourselfer could tackle this job. I probably already have, I don't know, 15 to 20 hours in this, a couple hours a day, actually into it. I remember when I was first doing this stuff would take me 30 plus 40 hours when I was first starting. The earlier model stuff, there's less fuses, there's smaller fuse boxes, there's less wires, less work, less difficulty. Things 72 about the same, 73, the ignition starts changing. They start adding different instrumentation for the dash. The main thing that's going to make it more difficult for a do-it-yourselfer, say 73, 74, and later, up to 79 for the Bay bus, the schematics change. There's a lot more going on, and the legibility, the learning curve is not as graceful for the late stuff, schematic-wise, for the late wiring harnesses as they are the earlier stuff. But come on, everybody wants an early bay. Split buses ride like a tractor, late bays, square tail lights, nothing wrong with them, but but early bay is where it's at. So love this kit, really liking how this is turning out. I've tested everything on this system. That's how I discovered the wiper switch issue, or the wiper motor issue. But yeah, take your time, don't get in a hurry. Could you do this? Yes. Have patience. Allow yourself to learn if you're not familiar with the schematic or how to read the schematics. Take photos. That way you know the location of different things. It's one thing to see on a schematic, but to have a pictorial reference, a video reference, makes it easier for me, and I'm sure many other of you guys would do the same. Make note of the routing of, say, the wiring harness that's separate going to the brake light switches, which are on the master cylinder underneath the car. Make note of how the harness is routed through the bus body, through the chassis tube, how it goes back, the rear torsion bar, how it tapers under, the front nose, that way it clears the drag link and steering components, and it clears the splash pan. Details matter. This is something that you don't want to have to fuss with this. And if you do this job thoroughly, and you do this job correctly, and you take your time with it, your dash lights are going to work, your bus is going to start, your turn signals work, your horn works. It's comfortable. You have a dome light when you open the door. You're able to turn the light on in the back if you have a camper, or you need to yell at your kids, you know. But yeah, that's the way to do this. That's the way to do this. Pull your windshield. Don't be overwhelmed by the glass. If you're not capable or familiar with, it's easier to pull the glass than it is to set it. You have to slap these things quite a bit. It's a rope-in style sill. If that's overwhelming to you, call your local glass shops to see if they will assist you. If you're not on a remote island, everyone's got a Volkswagen. They are everywhere. There's clubs all across this country. Find someone that has experience setting glass and see if they'll assist you with that. Don't let the fear or the unfamiliarity of removing glass and setting glass prevent you from doing it this way, because if you're going to replace this wiring harness in a bus, this is the way to do it. So I hope you guys find this video resourceful. Not necessarily going into how I wired it, but how I wire it, and try to apply my experience for you guys doing this for the first time, or maybe not. Maybe a refresher from something you did 20 years ago. But that's how I like to do this. Make baggies, label everything, take photos, take your time, drink a beer, drink some coffee, play some tunes, have a helping hand. The main thing is have a damn good time working on your bus, because you'll be driving soon enough. So thanks for watching the video. Click and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the road.